Hi there, Tracy here with another scrapbooking process video. This time I'm going to be making a double page using 14 pictures. And at the beginning, 7 of those are 4x6. I am going to cut down 4 of them into 3x6, but they're still pretty large photos for me and quite a lot of them. So let's see how this goes. So I am starting with some sketches here. I did some sketches on my phone, and they're all double page sketches because I'm planning to do quite a few double layouts over the next couple of months. I think I plan to do about one a month at least. And so I have my photos and they're coming out of my Epson PictureMate charm as I trim up some of them. More of them are printing up. And so you see me here taking a couple of the 4x6s and I'm actually trimming them down because so much of this 4x6 photo is just dead space. It's just the cabinet above and below the Barbies. And then for these ones of my daughters in the Barbie packaging, I wanted to make them stand out quite a lot, so I'm going to make them be different shapes than the other ones, and so that's why I trimmed down those. So those are my 2, 4, 6 4x6 photos. And oh yes, and then I also have one more, which is where I'm going to put my title. So to start with, I need to find a background paper for this, and I didn't want to use plain cardstock, but I wanted something fairly non-intrusive. So and I needed something that I had 2 of. So I have these Studio Calico grid papers. I bought them as a set from the Studio Calico store, and I'm using Grid 02 for this one, and I have 2 copies of it. And so I'm going to start by, I'm sort of following my sketch. My sketch was to have one photo off to the side and then a large collage of photos in the center and kind of balanced with that one. So in my sketch, I actually had the single photo off to the right-hand side bottom, and then the large clump of photos were over to the left-hand side and kind of centered. So I'm actually switching it around. You'll notice at the beginning, I flipped my phone upside down, and I'm using this sketch backwards, or I guess upside down. So I'm trimming down some of my photos, and you'll see that besides those 4x6s, some of which I trimmed down to 3x6, I also have some square photos that are printed at 3x3, and I have some more photos that are 3x4, and I have a total of 14 altogether. So 7 4x6, 4 3x6, 3 3x4s, and 4 3x3s. Although one of the 3x3s, I think I cut down a little bit to about maybe 2.5 by 3.5 or so. So these are all photos of the Barbie Expo that we reluctantly went to on a rainy day in Montreal. We were planning to do a walking tour of Old Montreal, and we woke up and it was pouring, like absolutely pouring. And where we only had one day in Montreal, we thought we would tour around the underground city. My kids really, really wanted to go shopping, and so we decided to do some of the malls that are all connected together, and shops and places that are basically all connected through an underground tunnel. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a nice way to spend a rainy day in Montreal. And so I took a picture of how I had that mosaic of photos. It's basically this giant collage, and I wanted to remember how I have it set up. The way that I set it up was so that my 2 busiest, largest photos that don't have, see how most of the photos besides these 2 have nice white space all around them. And so I put these 2 in the center so that they can be completely surrounded by photos that do have that nice white space around all of the Barbies. These are 2 very, very elaborate scenes. There were several scenes, but these were the 2 most elaborate of them. One is a casino scene with a like table. What is that called? Like a blackjack table or something, or a roulette. I don't know what anything is, but it was very fancy, and there was like this man helping a lady into a very fancy vehicle, and some performers. It was kind of like a Las Vegas scene. And then the other one is this really awesome scene of all these Barbies as paparazzi who are taking picture. I guess not paparazzi, but I guess the journalists that are taking pictures of this fashion show. And the Barbies actually moved along a track. And look at cute little Chloe there watching me scrap. So I went ahead and I matted the two 4x6 photos that weren't matted just to give some differentiation between the two of them. I found that they were creating a bit of a large black hole in the center of my collage, and I didn't want it to look like one of those photos ran right into the other one. I wanted it to be clear that they were two distinct photos. And my cat just wants to play. Sorry about that. And I also wanted to kind of tie them in and not make them stand out quite so much from all the other photos that have so much white on them. So I matted them in white to kind of try to serve both of those purposes. So now I'm just using the photo that I took of this collage a few minutes ago, and I'm just piecing it all back together again so that the two 4x6s are completely surrounded by the other photos. And I'm just kind of trying to balance them out so that they're going to overlap in a way that doesn't cover any of the parts of the photos that I really wanted to make sure were included. And I also really want that Pantene Barbie to be right in the middle. That one, the pink one with the dress, her dress is actually made out of tons of little tiny Pantene color chips. It was the coolest thing. It was by far my favorite Barbie because it was just so creative and so related to scrapbooking with the Pantene colors and so on. So I really wanted that photo to be front and center as far as all the photos go. I wanted that one to be able to stand out quite a lot. So I'm going to start by putting the most simple photos in place. So this first one, the 4x6, it's easiest to start with the largest ones and then build from around it. So I started with the 4x6. And now this is a tip for doing double pages. I always like to have a few things span across the gap. And here I'm taking the edge of the second 4x6 photo and I'm attaching it so that it overhangs. And then I'm going to use my Caterpillar crop and just take a slice off of it. And I'm going to just reposition the photo wasn't glued down to the mat in that spot, so the photo came loose. So I just repositioned it on the mat. And now I have this photo in these two pieces, one of which will be on one side and one of which will be on the other side. And I just positioned it so that I wasn't slicing anything important in half. So you definitely don't want your slice to take place in the center of a face or in something that's really detailed that you want to highlight the detail of. Basically, you want to put it in some of the dead space of the photo or where two things meet. So in this case, there are two Barbies there and there's a space between them, and that's where I made my slice go. Now I'm going to put this picture of my daughter a little bit above because I don't want it to look too much like that 3x6 photo is meant to line up as if it's a series of 4x6s or 3x6s. I want the photo of my daughter to look like it's kind of laid around the 4x6 that it's beside. I just did the exact same thing with that photo of all those flower themed Barbies. So there's an iris and a calla lily and a rose, and I don't know what the blue one is, but they had the names of all the flowers. And now this one is a photo of goddess themed Barbies, and I don't know what they all are, but they were all really beautiful. So I'm positioning that so that the slice is going to take place between two Barbies. And I also really thought that there was some beautiful lace on one of them, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't slice through the lace either. Even though the lace was between two Barbies, I wanted to make sure that I kept the lace intact on one side or the other side. So now the most complicated part of piecing together this collage is really over, because I have spanned that gap between the two pages on this double page layout, and now I can just piece together all these other photos over to the right of the two 4x6 photos. So here's one of my 3x3s, and here's the other 3x3 of that Pantene doll. And I made it so that the strip of the 3x3 photos just they were stacked and lined up with one another, and so that it just goes from the very, very top to the very, very bottom, and so that it will kind of spill off the page in that way, whereas all the other photos are fully contained in the page. And so I'm just measuring how far up this picture of my one daughter is so that I can make the picture of my other daughter be at about the same height. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but I don't want it to be too far off either. And I'm overlapping them so that, the dead space around some of the Barbies is covered up with some of the other photos. Some of the photos go right to the very edge, like all the detail goes right to the very edge, and some of the photos have a bit more space around the Barbies. I'm slipping this picture of Liv in underneath of the other photos, and I gave a little thumbs up because I really love how this collage turned out. I think it's nicely balanced, and I really like how my daughters are two bookends to this collage of beautiful Barbies, and I think they are the two most beautiful Barbies of all on this page. I'm using the broad tip of my Zig two-way pen. It's actually called a Zig Writer. It's not a two-way pen. I don't know why I made that up. It's a Zig Writer, and it has two ends on it. The fine end of mine it has run out. It's my oldest marker that I have, but for some reason, it's still really juicy on the other end. So I'm just using it for the broad marking. And what this is doing is it's giving a really nice, bold outline to the overall shape of this collage. It's kind of providing a border and containing it all so it doesn't look like it's spilling off the page, which is sometimes the case when you've got white edges of your photos on a mostly white background. So I want to really define the edges and contain this collage. And I'm going back and adding another line with my fine point marker just to add a little bit of detail around the edges and finish it off even more. So, I mean, the Barbies are so beautiful that I felt like a finer, more detailed border was really called for in this case, because it's the photos are of such elaborate sets and such elaborate designs. So I didn't really want a plain border. I wanted a little bit of a fancier border. I'm using my scrapbook adhesive by 3L for my as an adhesive for most of this layout, and that's a new one for me. I'm just trying it out. So now I'm taking this other 4x6 photo, which is sort of the summary photo. It's kind of like if there were a title for these photos, it would be this one. And because it's just kind of a beautiful shot of a whole case of Barbies all in a row. And so because there's so much going on this layout in terms of all the colors and designs in the photos, I really don't want to use any colored pattern paper at all on this one, although I'm gonna flirt with the idea. My first plan is to not put any colors at all on this layout, just because as I mentioned, the photos are so busy and full of energy and color. I really don't want to take away from them. And sometimes I think that when you use, now this would have been a nice pattern paper to use, that one with the paint chip that looks almost like paint chips that go from darker green to lighter green. That would have actually made a really pretty background for this if I had had two of them, but I didn't. So that wouldn't have worked. But I have all these papers out, and I'm kind of thinking about maybe using a soft paper behind that separate photo, but then I decided not to. As I was looking through the papers, I noticed that a lot of them have these really beautiful black and white edges on them, and so I thought I might be able to use some of them. So I'm cutting off 3 of them. and one has words on it and one has cupcakes, which isn't really related, but I thought I might be able to get away with using it anyways, and one has a black and white stripe. So now I'm just putting my layout together so that I can balance off where this individual photo is going to go. And now I want to tie it in with the other one, so I'm going to treat it to the same border that the others have, first using my Zig writer and then using the fine point Faber-Castell Pitt pen. So there we go. Now it kind of ties in with the other photos, and I'm going to zoom out in just a second. Sorry about that. What I'm doing while I'm zoomed into too much here is I'm just playing around with where I might want to put some of these strips. And I thought a strip might look really nice in these two places to just kind of further balance it off. I already have the two bookends of my daughters, that those photos look quite different from all the other ones and very similar to each other. So then I thought I'd cap off, like I have those two capping off the two ends, and then I thought I'd kind of cap off the top and the bottom by putting that really bold black and white stripe on one on the bottom and one on the top. And now I'm just going to cut out these two cut aparts, also from the Felicity Jane. Did I mention that was the Felicity Jane kit that I had pulled out there and gone through? You'll notice that my cat just walked by, and she actually walked and settled right into the Felicity Jane box and slept over there for the whole rest of the time that I was scrapbooking. There was another mouse in my scrap room, so I'm encouraging my cats to hang out with me so that they will find any more if there are any more. Oh, the perils of scrapbooking in the basement. We live in a really wooded area, and so field mice, they're not like city yucky, dirty, diseased mice or anything. They're just cute little field mice. They don't do any harm, and there's no food down here, so they don't stay for very long. Like there's no source of food, but we do sometimes get mice come in. We must have a hole somewhere in our house. We went around trying to find it and we just can't. But the cats usually catch them if I'm allowing them down here. So you saw me just fussy cut around those two black and white flowers. And I have the third piece of that, just a little tiny scrap of the black and white stripe, and I'm putting it down here kind of just under that other photo, and I'm just playing with the idea of maybe including that in the layout as well. And so I took the puffy letter stickers that are just plain black and white outline that come in the Felicity Jane kit, and I'm using the word Expo. And then I thought I would go to my stash. Here's my Razcog where I keep my letter stickers, and I thought I'd look for something higher contrast than the letters that I used to spell Expo. So first I went to my black because they're always nice high contrast, and then I thought, well, I'm spelling the word Barbie, so perhaps I should use something pink. So I grabbed some of my darker pink letter stickers, and my daughter came in and asked me a question, and I decided to go with these Dear Lizzie ones, mostly because I really like them and they have this kind of fashion feel to them they're just so super stylized that I can't see me using them in many situations, but they seem like they would apply in this situation. So I thought I would go ahead and use them for this one. They're actually not my very favorite pick from a design perspective, but they are my favorite pick from a theme perspective. So I would have liked a much higher contrast, like maybe a real chunky, really bold pink, but I really like how these look from a theme perspective. And sometimes you have to sacrifice design for theme or theme for design, because you're only limited to the supplies that you have on hand. So I do want this word to span the whole width of the photo, and conveniently it does just perfectly. So I started by placing the first and the last so that I can try to space out the rest of them. I did end up with a little bit too much space around the eye, so I had to shift over the E a little bit so that the eye didn't look too spread out. And now I'm just going to place the letters for the word Expo. Those puffy stickers are so lovely. I just love them. I love a nice, soft, velvety, puffy sticker. So I really like how that looks. I have to say that that's a pretty nice title. I kind of like it. Now I'm going to go ahead and place these black strips. I'm using my regular adhesive to do so. And then these cut aparts actually do come on adhesive paper, and so you can just tear away the backing and it becomes a sticker. But I actually didn't want it to sit flat. I wanted it to have a bit of dimension. So I'm leaving the backing on that piece of adhesive paper. And here I go again. I have to span this little gap between the two pages. So I just adhered it to the larger piece to that side of the paper. And now I'm just going to cut off that edge. These kinds of trimmers are perfect for doing this kind of piecework where you have to cut something that hangs off the edge because you can just line it up against the edge of the trimmer so easily. So I'm using a tiny little glue dot in the center of those flowers so that I can just curl up the edges and cast a little bit of a shadow on the paper behind it. And now I'm actually writing down some of the supplies that I used. So that thicker, the pink one that I spelled out Barbie, is called Treehouse, and it's by Dear Lizzie. And then I used, of course, the Felicity Jane puffy alphas and a couple of puffy stickers and the strips from the pattern paper. And now I'm just writing out my journaling so that I know what I want to say. Just because sometimes I actually often just journal off the top of my head, and because of that, a lot of my layouts have a real rambly type of journaling that isn't very planned out, and it's not always grammatically correct. And I actually don't mind that because that's the way that I speak, and as you guys know, I can kind of ramble, and I just think that it's very authentic and true to me when I just do it off the top of my head. But sometimes I know that ends up that results with me really not liking the journaling very much. So in this case, I decided to just spell it out ahead of time on that little notebook. And so I am just spelling it out. So I use that more to just plan it out than I did to judge how big or how long it would be, because I just decided I would just journal it would just take up as much of the space as it needed to take up. So that was more for a journaling reason than it is for a design reason. Like, I didn't really want to plan out how it's going to fall on the page. I just needed to know what I was going to say before I wrote it. So it says, in case you can't read it there, in case it's too tiny for you, it says, we weren't sure if we would enjoy the Barbie Expo at Les Cours in Montreal, but since it was raining, we gave it a shot. It turned out we all loved it, in brackets even Scott, and spent more than an hour and a half taking in the fashion and scenes. What a great way to spend a rainy morning in Montreal. I added a little heart just to fill up some of the space, and I underlined the journaling with the same pen I used to write the journaling. And I'm going to add a little something else because this journaling, it just doesn't look like it quite is anchored to the page, but I'm going to wait a little bit to do that. So, here I am taking the sequins that come in the Felicity Jane kit, and I just spilled a couple in each of the 3 places where I have those bits of black and white paper. And you'll see that I kind of went really overboard in the top center part, but that's okay. I like this way this is kind of an alternative to ink splatters. And what I like about it is that I can control it. I have been feeling very dissatisfied with my ink splatters of late. And so I decided that instead of using ink splatters on this layout that I just spent a whole lot of time putting together, I thought I'm going to splatter some sequins instead, and then I can just move them around if I don't like the way that they fell. So these ones fell pretty naturally and in the right amount right off the bat. So I'm just going to glue them down right where they landed. And I'm using my Tombow Mono liquid adhesive and Mono Multi, that is, liquid adhesive. And I'm even overlapping them where they overlapped. So I did glue them so that one kind of is laying on top of the other wherever that happened. And I did that because it just makes it look even more natural and like I didn't put them that way on purpose. So what I'm doing over here is I'm gluing down. I've already taken off all of the extra ones that I didn't want to have down here by Scully and Mulder. And I took quite a few of them. There were quite a few that landed on the photo. So I took all of those off. I didn't think Fox would want some like giant sequins on the crotch of his pants, for example. And here Scully has giant sequins on her face that I'm not going to notice until the very, very end. But don't worry, I take it off. I didn't glue it down there. And I really like how these ones have a real horizontal look to them. They really follow the line of the paper. And so here I'm just grabbing a whole bunch of them off of this giant spill that I have here. This is the great thing about spilling sequins as opposed to spilling ink splatter, because I can just pick it all off and it doesn't leave any residue or anything. And now at this point I have glued so many sequins down that the tips of my fingers are getting a little bit sticky, and so I'm using them to actually just stick my fingers onto the sequins and just pick them up with the stickiness of my fingers. So that kind of helps with that. And I'm just kind of trying to move them around a little bit so that they're not quite so distracting to the photo that they are spilling onto. And I find that the red ones really do grab a lot of your attention, so I'm taking most of the red ones off so that it can have more of a subtle look. Look at that rocker Barbie. Isn't she the coolest ever? And I like how the colors in the sequins pick up on a lot of the colors in the photos. And they kind of, by doing that, it kind of calms down some of the colors in the photos and allows some of the colors, because there really are lots of different colors, like there are pastels and bright colors and gem colors and reds and blues and greens. But by using a sequins mix that just picks up on some of the colors, it allows those colors to really be drawn out when you look at the overall collage. I lost that word for a second. And so that really helps with bringing together the overall layout and making it look a little bit more cohesive. And basically all those other colors that aren't brought out through the sequins mix, they all just kind of blend in and kind of disappear to your eye when you're looking at it from the larger distance. So again, this is Tombow Mono Multi-Liquid Adhesive, which is my favorite adhesive for gluing any non-paper products onto my layout. Anything big and bulky. What I like about it is that you only need to use the tiniest little bit and it really holds very, very well. And that's great with sequins. So now I'm just putting those sequins away, gathering up the leftovers. And any second now, I'm going to zoom out and just take a closer look at this and decide if there's anything else that I want to add. And then I'll start to show you guys the close-ups. So there we go. It looks like it's done, so I'm just going to show you the close-ups here. Here's how that title turned out. I really like it. Like I said, those letter stickers are not my favorite from a design perspective, but I think they really fit with the idea of Barbie. And here I added a bit more journaling just to make this journaling look like it's more integrated with that 4x6 photo above it. So I added the date right above my journaling and kind of like in between the photo and my journaling. And I also added some X's and O's down at the bottom just to balance off with the date that I added. And those are just for purely design, just to balance it off. Here's the second page. You'll get to see some of these beautiful photos of the Barbies that we took. It was really hard to get great photos because they were all behind glass display cases. And so look at that Farrah Fawcett sitting on that beach towel. Isn't that hilarious? Yeah. So there were so many fun Barbies to take pictures of. I had to limit the ones that I included in this layout to the ones that were really significant to us. So we have the X-File ones because Scott really loves the X-Files. My kids really love J-Lo because we've been fans of the American Idol. I have Alice in Wonderland and the Queen of Hearts because my daughter was in a play. I have the Rocker Girl because we went to the Hard Rock Cafe when we were in Toronto. And then just the other ones are just the most pretty and the most detailed scenes I included. And of course the Pantene one I needed because I love it so much. So I hope that you have enjoyed this very detailed. Sorry about all the detail with the sequins there, but I do like to include my whole process so that you can see the whole entire thing, even the boring details. I have lots and lots of photos of this spread. So leave me a comment. I love to hear from you guys. So feel free to leave me a comment if you've got anything to say. And otherwise, I'll see you on my next video.